Elon Musk and the team that is working does not have access to personal data. They don't have access to your social security number. That is a lie. Elon Musk does have a security clearance. He has a top secret security clearance. By God, he makes the rockets for NASA. But the suggestion that he somehow can't be trusted to dig into how we're spending our money is nothing but a smokescreen to hide the corruption and the wasteful spending that has occurred there. And I am personally offended at the left's continued references to 19-year-olds and 21-year-olds in there doing work. There are 19-year-olds who have won the Medal of Honor defending this country. Just because you're 19 doesn't mean you're some child who can't be trusted.
Representative Mark Green and Rand Paul went off here. There's 3 clips in this video I want to share with you. Obviously, the timestamps, as usual, are in the description from Paulina Luna, Rand Paul, and Mark Green, who absolutely went off. And Rand Paul just exposes even more of this corruption that we've been seeing from USAID, which is absolutely disgusting, but incredible on these great Republicans' part. Let's go.
Corruption going on behind USAID's doors has been a wake-up call for all Americans. As chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, I spent the last 2 years exposing the Biden administration's sabotage of our border and the policies that kept America safe. I saw firsthand their willful refusal to protect this country. Under the guise of foreign aid, USAID has been an unapologetic front for a far-left agenda. It has become self-evident there weren't a handful of foolish policies, but rather a coordinated strategy of radical, idiotic, and often anti-American priorities. Idiotic, you say? Millions to teach Moroccans how to make pottery? The Moroccans were making pottery before we were a country. This entire debate today and the crocodile tears from Democrats just goes to show what's wrong with this town. Not a single Democrat I've heard has expressed dismay at the many examples of crazy, wasteful spending. I don't understand the objection to a deep dive in how we spend our money, but perhaps it's the fact that over the last several weeks, a massive surge has occurred in the search for a criminal defense attorney. That probably says it all. 5 times in this city, any other city in the nation. I'd like to remind the committee that President Kennedy unilaterally created USAID through an executive order in 1961. Yet the President Trump, orders a momentary pause after winning a mandate for reform, and Democrats cry, constitutional crisis. This is after 4 years of reckless spending and unrepentant lawlessness from the Biden administration. I want the American people to understand how this works in Washington. As long as you're spending other people's money, no one bats an eye. But the second you want to save taxpayer dollars, the swamp cries wolf, or in this case, unprecedented constitutional crisis. This breathless, fake outrage from the left is utterly insane. And you know what the American people, you know they can see right through it. The generosity of Americans and the blessing of giving aid to others has always been one of our most valuable tools for diplomacy. The American people have a proud history of championing aid to our fellow man, but lawless bureaucrats have poisoned that goodwill. Many USAID programs are wasteful and actively sabotage our diplomatic relationships by forcing woke ideology on our partners. Just look at PEPFAR, a beacon of hope in the fight against HIV/AIDS, yet the Biden administration even weaponized this crucial program, jeopardizing lives and undermining our relationship with African nations. Under Administrator Powers, our message to Africa was explicit, as it was heinous. Abort your babies and violate your religious convictions, or we won't grant you life-saving aid. Let me be crystal clear to those who've been complicit in this betrayal. Firing those involved is just a start. We have a long way to go. And one last point. I want to correct the record on a couple of things. First, Elon Musk and the team that is working does not have access to personal data. They don't have access to your social security number. That is a lie. Elon Musk does have a security clearance. He has a top secret security clearance. By God, he makes the rockets for NASA. But the suggestion that he somehow can't be trusted to dig into how we're spending our money is nothing but a smokescreen to hide the corruption and the wasteful spending that has occurred there. And I am personally offended at the left's continued references to 19-year-olds and 21-year-olds in there doing work. There are 19-year-olds who have won the Medal of Honor defending this country. Just because you're 19 doesn't mean you're some child who can't be trusted. It is offensive. And if you're 19 years old out there, 20 years old, and you're serving this country, by God, your service matters. Keep serving. We thank you for that. It would appear that I'm out of time, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Amen.
I've been saying this in a lot of videos recently. The fact that they're 19 years old has nothing to do with it. They're software engineers. These are guys that could have had jobs at any top firm in the world. Some of them just skipped right through university because they were so good. These are SpaceX guys that are deciding to do something to help their country. Whatever they're getting paid is much less than they would get paid at a private company doing this work. And you think that age matters when it comes to this stuff? These are young men that are working for SpaceX on Elon Musk's projects. Do you think if they're working on rockets for NASA, doing coding and siphoning data for them, that they can't find some government overspending in a bureaucrat's office? I mean, give me a break. It's probably the easiest task they've had to do in the last 10 years. It's unbelievable by the left. And what you don't hear from the left, they'll talk about these young men. They'll talk about no one elected Elon Musk, and thousands and thousands of bureaucrats are unelected in the US every year anyway. This doesn't matter. Most of the people that were doing these jobs before these young men were unelected people. But nobody on the left, this is kind of like reminds me of the BLM riots. Mostly peaceful protests, remember those? Nobody ever condemns it. Nobody ever talks about the findings of Doge. They'll criticize Doge, but they'll never talk about the findings. And if you don't see a problem with the findings that Elon Musk and his teams are finding, you, my friend, are the problem. Let's get to Rand Paul because this man has the receipts. Let's go.
Today we are going to dive into reckless and wasteful spending of our federal government, particularly when it comes to foreign aid. The United States should not be the sugar daddy for the entire world, especially not for countries and organizations who act contrary to our nation's beliefs. Our country is $36 trillion in debt. Yet we continue to send billions of dollars overseas, often funding projects that are not just useless, but in many cases actively harmful. Taking the path to fiscal responsibility is often a lonely journey, but thanks to Elon Musk and Doge, they've brought to light the waste that I've been highlighting for over the last decade. Every year I release my Festivus report to expose the ridiculous spending of the federal government, and this past year was no exception. I uncovered over $1 trillion in government waste, with the State Department and USAID being some of the worst offenders. Let me give you just a few examples of what these unelected bureaucrats are spending your hard-earned money on. $4.8 million went to Ukraine's public affairs office in Kiev to fund social media influencers. Instead of protecting our own border, $2.1 million was sent to Paraguay to enhance their border security. USAID also funded a group of Ukrainian women-led designers to travel to the Paris fashion show. I don't know about you, but I'd imagine Ukrainian women have more important things to worry about than appearing in the Paris fashion show. USAID spent $2 million on transgender surgeries, hormone therapy, and gender-affirming care in Guatemala. $3 million was spent to promote girl-centric climate action in Brazil. And I'd love to picture what a conversation about girl-centered climate action looks like. It's like, hey, Barbie, do you know what girl-centered climate change is? Since when do we believe arguments need to be tailored for girls to understand? How insulting to women at large that they think there are special arguments for girls to understand that are different than boys. $25,000 to fund a transgender opera in Colombia. Was nobody in Colombia willing to buy a ticket? USAID spent $32,000 in Peru to create a comic featuring a trans hero to address social and mental health issues. What does that have to do with diplomacy? $20,000 to fund a DEI program for a drag theater in Ecuador. $20 million was spent to produce a new Sesame Street show in Iraq. USAID spent $6 million to promote a project boosting sustainable tourism in Egypt. I guess the U.S. is now the travel agent for the entire world since they spent $50 million on Tunisia's tourism, even though it's already one of the most visited countries in Africa. USAID gave $87.9 million to help Afghans farm, and incidentally, farm poppy, the plant from which opium is extracted. As of 2021, Afghanistan supplied 90% of the world's heroin. I thought the saying in the U.S. was just say no to drugs. How about we just say no to wasteful foreign aid? $70,000 for a live musical event to promote diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in Ireland. State Department paid $330,000 to compile a disinformation index to blacklist conservative media outlets. USAID funneled over $54 million to EcoHealth Alliance, funding the very organization linked to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the likely origin of the COVID-19 pandemic. Disgraceful. $15 million was awarded to Taliban-controlled Afghanistan to distribute oral contraceptives and condoms. There's still a $3 billion fund for Afghan reconstruction that I've tried to take that money to pay for other things that the government is spending money on, and yet there's been resistance by the other side to deplete that fund and say, we're done funding things in Afghanistan.
Guys, if you don't mind just smashing that thumbs up button for your boy, sorry to stop it right here, but it really does help me out. And if it's not your first time here and you're not yet subscribed, hopefully this could be the video that I earn your subscription. Let's get back to Rand Paul.
This is just the tip of the iceberg. These are taxpayer dollars being used to fund ideologically misguided, ineffective, and unnecessary projects, thanks to the blundering bureaucracy, while our own citizens struggle to put food on the table. This is not what our government was designed to do. The U.S. government is not a charity, and it should not be doling out cash to foreign organizations, some of which actively oppose the United States with no oversight. And we don't have the money to give. We're borrowing the money we send. We need to ask a simple question. Why are we borrowing money to send money overseas? Even if USAID eliminated the crazy left-wing grants for trans operas, it still makes no sense to borrow money to then turn around and send it overseas. Borrowing money to send as charity is like the worker who has no money left after paying for their food, rent, and gas, saying, oh, well, I see this homeless person, I have such great sympathy. I'll go to the bank and I'll borrow $1,000 to give to this person. That's what we are doing. We can't pay for our own, and we are borrowing the money we send overseas. That money could be used to pay down our $36 trillion debt and take care of the American people, the very people who actually pay these taxes in the first place. It's time for a real change. America should not continue to be the world's piggy bank. It's time to end the waste of foreign aid and end the bureaucracy and for once do what's right by the American taxpayer. With that, I recognize the ranking member for opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If you voted for Trump, you voted for this. Trump said it a million times, and we talk about it in a lot of videos, right? He said, I'm going to go line by line in all these agencies, starting with USAID, and I am going to find stuff. And it turns out that I don't think he was thinking he was going to find this much crap. Normally, when you have these big agencies, you would think that most of it would be above board, and then there would be some corrupt nonsense, some people taking kickbacks, there would be some money going to weird shit, but most of it would be good. It's not the case here. Less than 1% of the money seems to be going to places where the money probably should go. Instead, it's going to all this stuff that Representative Rand Paul just listed out. All this wasteful spending. But if you voted for Trump, you voted for this. This guy said, I'm going to lower inflation. This is how you lower inflation. You stop wasteful government spending. We're spending over $2 trillion a year right now, overspending by $2 trillion a year, and we don't even have any wars. What's going to happen if there was a war that broke out? Like he said, we're borrowing to lend money. It makes zero sense. We have enough problems at home with the border, the fentanyl crisis, homeless crisis, a housing market that is out of whack. If you're a young person today, salaries have not gone up that much over the last 50 years in the US, but let me tell you something, renting and housing prices has. People voted for this. People wanted a safer border. They want their moms, daughters, sisters, brothers to be safe. sons and daughters, and they want more money in their pocket. And that doesn't matter if you're black, Latino, white, purple, yellow, green. These are things that across the board in the world, people can all agree on. We want our families to be safe, and we want to be able to provide for them. Now let's get to Paulina Luna exposing some of the USAID help that is given to other countries to destabilize nations with race riots. Unbelievable. It's happened in America, and now these dirty Democrats are trying to make it happen in other places. Let's go.
In 2021, the Special Operations Command under Mark Milley, as chairman of the Joint Chiefs, put out an instruction manual, a vision for 2021 and beyond, that contained instructions and examples on how the military could work with the State Department, Intel Services, and USAID using race riots. Here's examples of some of the instruction manuals here, 1 and 2, in order to destabilize nations. In addition to that, they advocated for setting up job fairs near some of these riots so that disaffected workers could gain employment. Now, as a member of Congress, I ask myself, did anyone in USAID get elected to Congress? How about to a presidency? When you are acting in the shadows and you are destabilizing nations using race wars to do it and then advocating that the military does it, in my opinion, not only do you put the future generations that would have to fight in those wars in jeopardy, but at the end of the day, you're operating without any oversight. So I guess the question for you guys is, Mr. Natsios, is that something that you were aware of? Are you aware that that instruction manual is being promoted not just with the military under Milley, but that USAID may be operating in this capacity? Because in my opinion, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of many of my constituents, I don't think that's where our taxpayer dollars need to be going.
Well, I completely agree with you. Personally, I doubt very much that what you've been told is accurate. But let me just tell you.
I'm telling you right now, I brought the receipts, okay? And the reason, I'm not trying to argue with you, but I find this disturbing on so many capacities. And I would like to also just, if I can, sir, Mike Benz, what he's exposing and bringing receipts, I've confirmed it. Thank you for doing that on behalf of the American people, because I understand that when you take on the intelligence agencies, we're also now finding that apparently in this manual, that they're also advocating for social media campaigns illuminating controversy to a global audience. I mean, using disinformation campaigns, is this happening here in our own country? Where's the oversight?
Just to ask you, who in the agency, what bureau,
I just said, you can actually find that instruction in this manual that Milley approved.
Military manual, isn't it?
Yes, but Milley approved it. You have it right here, USAID, working with government agencies. I mean, this is not...
Wait a second, did AID say that, or did the military say AID?
Well, that would be the question for you, sir.
Well, I don't
mean,
think
these
AID
operations,
wrote that.
Sorry to interrupt you. These operations that are taking place without government oversight, without the authority of the president, without the authority of Congress, real men and women serve and they die because of stuff like this. When you destabilize nations without any oversight, we have to fight those wars. You have our chairman right here that literally risked his life. No, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm frustrated. I know it's not necessarily your fault.
But I'm telling you,
but
it's
as a head of the agency, that's not.
I'm telling what Ben's told you is nonsense.
That's not nonsense. These are the information and forms. And Ben's put this out to the American people.
AID did not write that,
Sir, I
Congresswoman.
disagree with you on so many levels, and I appreciate you being here
How do
today.
you know they
this
wrote
is not
it?
easy. How do I know what?
That any person can write AID's name into a manual. It goes on all the
Sir,
time.
they are advocating that the U.S. military
Not
work
the-
with
and not
taxpayer funded State
AID.
Department, USAID funds to destabilize nations. That is
Someone in
unacceptable.
special-
I don't care who wrote it. USAID needs to come down and condemn it. They need to provide oversight to Congress on exactly where our tax dollars are going. And I know I might be at 17 seconds with our time, but sir, I hope that you agree. Can I, yes or no, do you agree that this is wrong? Period.
I
Should
think
this
the
be
military
happening?
should be held accountable. I think it's
And
nonsense.
should USAID condemn it?
Nonsense to
Should
suggest that
USAID
AID
condemn
wrote
it?
that.
Should they condemn it?
The military.
Absolutely ludicrous. They're all getting exposed. And again, nobody on the left is saying anything about all this stuff that they're finding. They're just saying Elon Musk is unelected. Anybody who's okay with hearing all this and thinks this is fine, you are anti-American. I hope you liked the video. I hope you were informed by it. If you did, smash that thumbs up button for me. It really goes a long way to help me out. And also, if you're not yet subscribed, hopefully this could be the video that I earn your subscription. Peace out, everybody.